So he's I did my interested. I need help on it. I wouldn't get rid of balance.
What is it?
It's only once every 5 years.
Well, you people can have
Good evening, everyone. I'll call our special meeting to order here in the Committee of the Whole Conference Room at 6 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Alderperson Murphy.
Present.
Ms. Mia.
Present.
Rosette.
Present.
Finch. President McNeil.
Present.
President. Schmidt.
Present.
We have no remote electronic attendance. We vote to public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? Yeah. Invocation on the person short. Okay, questions on the agenda? I have no corrections. So we move to our roundtable discussion. Special CIP Improvement Fund, Mr. Vitas.
Okay, well, as you know, we have been slowly, methodically progressing through all things budget, which is good, and trying to wind down and finalize the special CIP fund before we move to our October budget workshop. So some of these things you'll be very familiar with, some of these things maybe not so much. I guess first things first, I'm just going to turn it over to Carol so we can go through our natural gas electric franchise fee discussion and then work our way down. Our recommendation. You go. Franchise.
Yes, thank you, Bob. As Bob mentioned, this is a continuation of our July 15th roundtable as well as our August roundtable. And tonight we are hoping to kind of zero in on the revenue side primarily and to have some guidance and come close to finalizing what some of those revenue streams are, as well as taking one final look at the expenditures as we know them right now. And so the very first item here to look at is the natural gas and electric fee. And as Bob and I are pulling out that ordinance to bring forward to you, as we've been discussing in the last couple of meetings, we noticed that the ordinance that was approved back in 2023 actually includes a rate increase of 3% that is effective for January 1 and 26. So there's actually no action that is needed. I have attached a copy of that resolution that was adopted. And on page 2, after the resolution forward, on the bottom of that first page of the resolution, if you see that, the very last sentence, it says 3% effective January 1 and 26. And so that's kind of where we're at with that franchise fee. So no further action is needed. And the good thing is that fee, and I remember this now when we adopted it, if you pull out, it's the third big spreadsheet in your little packet, the third to the back. Third from the back. And if you look down that 26 year, there you will see that natural gas and electric franchise fee. I highlighted it in yellow, 1,846,000 projected for 26. That is allowing us to go down to the pink row now, the number 1 pink down below. It'll be the first year that we are able to increase our CIP funding $2 million. And again, as you all know, that was a strategic goal to be increasing our capital improvement fund funding from $1 million up to $3 million over the 10-year period. Halfway there. And I guess the last thing to say is Mid-American needs 90 days to implement that fee. So we will plan to move forward and give them notification so that they can get that fee implemented on January 1st. Are there any questions on the franchise fee? As we work our way through.
Good question.
Schmidt has a question.
It was not my recollection that we passed the 3% meeting, and I do apologize, I'm going back to the minutes, and so I would like to have a chance to review that, given that this was not something we received in time to review prior, so just, I would like to return to this if I ask later. This is all.
Yeah, there can be a period for more questions, conversation after presentation.
If you are still looking at the big spreadsheet, because I kind of wanted to address revenues out of the chute. As we move forward over the next 5-year period, you will see we do have future consideration of increase in that franchise fee, another 1% in 28, an additional 1% in 29, up to a total of 5%. And that, to our recollection, that is the legal limit, 5% for franchise fees. That's a discussion for another meeting. But you can know that that's what this plan is built around, with the assumption that we will be considering that fee.
Is it possible for us to get another spreadsheet at some point that does not assume the 4 and 5? That keeps it more level at 3. You know, we slowly ramped up to 3, I believe, here over 2 years.
Right.
And it could be the will of council that we don't actually get all the way to 5. That it's kind of like false security in a sense of money coming in. And I realize from now the way you've done budgeting for us with the 3-year projections that every change we make in the current year we're looking at does impact the rest of it. So I think it just would be helpful if we could not assume the full 4 and 5%. I'm seeing heads shaking yes.
I'm trying to remember, I know we have a reason discussed to increase it eventually. I don't remember what it was. I mean, I see the fire station, obviously, and it was probably the biggest driver, or potentially the park downtown. Was there any other thing that?
It was predominantly the riverfront.
Okay,
Riverfront with CIP. Yeah, for the infrastructure.
But we were trying to add the 2 to 3 million extra because we found out that our pavement condition index was only gonna make a dent if we actually invested that much money into improved roads, right? So that's why we did this. It was kind of all of the above, but that was the initial driver of costs that we know we have to improve our road network.
I also think part of that discussion was probably significant amount of money from ARPA was being invested into the road infrastructure. That's how we hit that peak that we have never seen investment into the road infrastructure. And we also knew that was going to dissipate this year. So I think that was another part of why we were looking for alternative revenue sources.
So, also a new chart that shows the 3% every year at minimum or maximum, at maximum, would jive with what you just pointed out. It says 2026 and thereafter. See that in the ordinance?
Yes, it did.
Right, so like right now, the ordinance does not say we're gonna do this, right? So I think we should be in alignment. Possible. Any other questions at the time? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. And then our next, significant property, our revenue is our property tax that goes into this fund. And the administrative recommendations that Bob and I are looking at consideration for you to maintain the levy rate at $1.7198 for this upcoming year to take advantage of increased assessed value growth. And as you may recall, this last year when we reduced the levy rate again, it was the lowest it's been in 35 years. So even if we maintained it at the $1.71, we would still be the lowest in 35 years from levy rate. And so we are not wanting a decision tonight, but we are wanting to walk through the recommendations so you know the impact. And then we're hoping you'll have good information so we can make a decision and then get back together on that Saturday session for the budget. So I'm gonna kind of walk you through that. First of all, if we maintain the levy rate at 1.71 and take advantage of the growth, it's about a 5.92%, and I'm gonna take you back into these charts. And if we keep the levy rate constant, it would generate an additional $159,000 above what is actually needed to balance the budget. And it could go straight into the CIP fund for a total of $359,000 annually. And that $159,000 over a 10-year period is about $1.6 million of additional money for this fund exclusively. We won't be using it for anything else. So now, if you go, the big chart that you have on the spreadsheet, go back 4 pages back. And you'll see 25 versus 26 property tax allocations. Questions? Everybody on the page?
First page after the ordinance.
So you go forward, I'm sorry, go forward, got 4 pages. Yep. Sorry, they're not numbered. So I'm gonna walk you through, again, we're not asking for a decision tonight, but I want you to have good information. We are very pleased to say that we got our assessed values the earliest that we've ever gotten since I have been employed here. So it's really nice to have them early so we have time to really think this through. So the very first line, if we look at our fire pension, this is our annual contribution into the pension fund. It is mandated by the state of Illinois. It is calculated from an actuary through the state of Illinois because they manage our pension funds. And so that actuarial report is stating that the amount that we need to keep the fund on track so that we're meeting our 90% obligation in the years 2050 is to increase our contribution $163,000 or about 7.6%. So that levy would be going up to $2,317,000. For police, it's just about double that. And again, how these actuaries come up with the numbers, it's based on the rate of mortality, our rates of salary increases, any new positions that we have, those types of things. And it's calculated third party independently. So that's the police and fire pension. Then we have our general levy. And over the last couple of years, we have put 100% of this new levy amount into our special CIP fund. And so again, if you look at the big spreadsheet, if you still have that out, and you go down that column, you will see it on the property taxes, the first yellow. It's $1,146,927. That is a combination of the 987 that you see on that third line, back on that previous page, the 987, plus the recommendation of keeping the levy rate the same, so taking the additional 159,303. So that would be a total of 1,146,927 going into the special CIP. The next line in on taxes is our debt levy. And the only thing we pay out of our debt levy is the principal and interest on our pension obligation bonds. And for 2026, it just happens that the P&I is going down about $35,000. So it's $5,090,000 even. And then we've got our parks and library funds that in the past we've been doing about 3% a year. It's not a lot of money into those funds, but with that 3%, we were able to balance those funds for the library and parks and keep them sold. And by the end of their 3-year budgets for 26, 27, 28, they are keeping within that range of 20 to 25%. I think they're both roughly about 22%. But that's working. And again, with our annual salary increases actually being 3.5% or better, and then the cost of inflation, they actually did a really good job to try to keep the budgets balanced within that 3%. So then the next line is the gray. So first of all, I'll stay at the green. So the total, which would be the minimum property taxes that we absolutely would need to balance the budget as we're now preparing, would be $837,582, and it is just shy of a 5% increase. That's everything all in that we need to balance. Now we're wanting you to potentially consider an additional levy dollars, keeping the levy rate same for 159,000. That would bring up the total to 996,885. And that does push us over the threshold for meeting the truth in taxation public hearing on those taxes. So to keep it, we would have to have one more step in the budget process to have a hearing. But again, that 159,000 annually would accumulate to 1.6 million over a 10-year period. So there's a lot of things, either from an infrastructure standpoint or riverfront development we could do. So, some things to think about. And then just very quickly, and I'm happy to answer questions and chime in too. We'll take a quick look at the values on the next page, just so you understand what's happening to the growth. The very next page. And this comes right from the county assessor and the numbers view. And if you look at the very middle column, and then that first bunch of rows, you will see the net increase in the EAV with no new construction, 5.83%. So that is existing property and what the growth is on existing property. If we go over to the very last column in that first section, if you add in new construction, we've got some new dollars as well. It's a growth of about almost 5.92%. And when you look at residential, it's in total, the growth in residential, 6.46%. Our commercial is 4.85%, industrial at 6%. So the total down there in this, the second group of rows, 5.92%. We had very good growth within the city. We'll be very pleased. When I first came on board, it was even less than 1%. So it's been wonderful that we have some growth. Wonderful.
Is it correct to say this would be the first year we have growth without the impact of ARPA? Or did we have some overlap with when we've spent ARPA, or it's not related?
It's just the assessed values of the property.
So when
Okay,
people buy
right,
and sell
got it.
properties, typically when people buy and sell properties,
Right.
and increase the cost of the home, gets
Yeah.
added in by the county.
Yeah.
Full assessor at the county. People take out building permits, pad additions, those get added on as well. So that the growth dollars on residential are based on that. Same thing.
So
applies to
it's-
commercial, new commercial construction, new residential.
I guess I'm mixing up incorrectly. The narrow lane of property growth and overall economic. I guess at some point, if you can tell us, like,
Got it.
when we hit that, we're seeing growth without the help of ARPA. That would be a great question to know. Have we hit that? That's not necessarily
Yeah.
right now. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah,
it's sort
no,
of
I
like
know what you're saying. I mean, the ARPA investment dollars that we spend on infrastructure could be driving some of the growth, right? If you're extending water lines for growth or sewer lines for growth, yes, absolutely. That's what they're doing in Bedford when they're extending their water sewer beyond Interstate 80. They're looking for the growth dollars, so they're investing in the infrastructure to capital that. could have used ARPA dollars to do that, let's say south of the airport, like continue to extend water and sewer lines, that we didn't.
Mhm.
We used it to rebuild existing infrastructure as opposed to building new infrastructure beyond the third local levels.
Okay, so just to wrap it up from the question I'm asking, I'm still interested in taking the temperature of the economic health of our city, regardless of what the assessor is telling us. You see what I'm saying? I want to know our overall economic health without that, because those are other drivers, right? People coming in and setting up businesses and all of that. Does that make sense? I don't know where we get that from, and it's maybe not as important to the issue of what is our levy rate gonna be, right? And what is our budget gonna be? It's just more of a litmus test
I
that I'm
think-
interested. Does that, you guys understand what I'm asking?
I think if we were to take the monthly reports that you receive coming out of the building department.
Yes,
It clearly establishes permit valuations that have been submitted. Now, keep in mind, permit valuations are not 100% spot on either, right? So if somebody wants to build an addition under their house, they say the permit value is 25, they spend 30. It eventually will be captured somewhere, but there is always that missing element, that gray, and I've seen that forever. So what you're seeing is you see all the residential permits that have happened, more importantly, a lot of commercial investments are taking place. Industrial is almost pretty much non-existent right now at this moment. But that may change too, okay, soon. But that's where you would capture that, as opposed to just looking at these numbers
Yeah,
coming from the assessors.
Simeon?
If this is an ignorant question, I apologize. Our growth is 5.92%. Our increase of property tax levy is 5.92%. Is this us capturing the entire growth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I know in the past, a lot of members of council have said, hey, we capture half the growth, or we capture a percentage of it. We never go the whole amount. Was that considered? Are there other people that agree? I'm looking at Alderperson Schmidt, because he's the one who is very adamant about 50% in the past, but with flooding. I'm just kind of interested in that discussion.
And if you,
we can have them answer.
I won't support an increase in captured more than 50% of our growth. Most of that growth comes in unrealized gains. And while I do think it's fair to capture some of that as it will be coming, I also think that it becomes very unfair as we have huge property tax increases at a time when we are also seeing rate increases and franchise fee increases. So I won't vote for anything over that 50%. I may not even go that high. Need to walk through its still picture, but
Thank you.
so I'm clear. So based on what you just said, then you would not be in favor of the $159,000 because that's what goes over.
I think
Or you're
Correct.
saying you'll take the 159 and you'll take another 159 to get to some formula.
around 2.5% or level. 2 point whatever.
I mean, this is a decision council will make. The recommendation I'm making is being made for a reason. As I'm watching that, you go back to the annual popular report, you take a look at the plunging line that's happening with the property tax. That's all well and good for now. One day that's not going to be the case. And somebody's going to be sitting in all of our chairs looking at that number. They're going to be faced with the decision we were all faced with 4 years ago about raising fees and bringing up franchise fees and trying to balance the budget with or without ARPA. And they're going to have to adjust that property tax like the school district's been doing. Well, we've been plunging, they've been claiming. So let's be fair to ourselves. We have been responsible. And I'm just saying, I think we've been responsible enough to let it plateau for a while. Because we do have a riverfront that has to get redeveloped, and it will not be fully redeveloped with private sector funds. It just won't happen.
So what it takes then is for for when we get to those budget meetings, especially that October one where we usually end up voting on what that levy is gonna be, right?
Right.
Every council member needs to know what number they're comfortable with and what out of this chart doesn't get done at the level that you described,
Yes.
right? Because that's the consequence.
Yes.
It's fine, but we need to fully digest that before, is it October 18th?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's also the reason for the request I had earlier on the 3% for these other years, because it probably brings it down. The consequence makes it real,
Right.
along with a potential lower levy than what you're recommending.
It will just reduce the available resources for things such as the riverfront redevelopment. Really. That's gonna be the biggest impact because the fire station is a bond issue. So that's kind of a protected issue as opposed to the river.
That's helpful clarification.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks for your input.
And I might have
Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
While I have serious doubts on capturing 100% of the growth, I also do think that another fair way to measure this and look at is that we continue to revert to trying to get that same percentage. And I think if we're not going to try and not capture 100% of the growth, at the very least making sure we go and see, keeping it and of course it changes, as we know with appeals and everything that's around moving down the preferred budget. Trying to get as close as we can to see, hey, we're gonna keep it about the same rate we had is I think very fair.
In those dollars,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah, so that's trying to keep our target rate around that same by fall position.
okay. Yes.
I'll point out too, when we started 4 years ago, the rate was over 2.
Yes.
And now the money's gone up, but that's because property value has gone up. We've lowered the rate. And Carol, do you know Rock Island's offhand or any of our neighborhood cities? I remember they were like 2.5%, 3%.
Yes, they're higher than that's like next Tuesday, we have another budget work session. So I will update these numbers and charts and I will get you some history
Thank you.
as well as for other things that have, the remaining taxing. Okay. You got good information.
Yes, Mr. Mercier.
Thank you. And I recall, wasn't the Quad Cities a little higher than most other municipalities across the state? I remember seeing something like that.
Yes and no, information was presented to us, that was attempted to make it look like that, but most of the cities that were at lower, especially lower than where we are now, had separate park districts and separate
Okay.
library
Yes.
boards. So there are some that certainly were lower, but it was not as clear as it was once presented.
Thank you. So any information in addition to just the numbers would be greatly appreciated.
And just a little on that, one of the communities also had a 3% sales tax because they were a college town in the middle of the state. So it was a very unfair comparison. But I think for our kind of community, we're doing really, really well compared to all the other river towns. Quad Cities.
Thank you. Please continue.
And so I just wanted to, again, no decision tonight, but just so you know the impact, I always want to tell you what the impact would be. If you were to approve the recommendation to keep the levy rate the same, on the average residential property, it would be going up about $44 a year, or $3.67 a month. So it's that next page, and then on the commercial, $183 annually for $15.25. And then just for comparison, if you want to write this down, I'll show the amount that of like when I'm saying to maintain, it's the kind of the required level levy amount. So we would say normally to pay for the fire pensions and the parks and all that. Reducing or keeping that at that 4.97% back on this page would reduce the levy rate to 1.7044, or it's down about 1.5 cents, 1.54 cents. And that reduction would be $5 a year on residential and $33 on commercial. And again, the dollars we're looking at would be 100% of that, those extra dollars going into this special CIP.
So, thank you so much for that info. That's very helpful. So 4.92, which is right, 92 is the minimum we need to cover all of our pension, other like mandated bonds, et cetera, et cetera.
All in.
And the normal CIP that we put money toward. So minimum, your recommendation is 4.92, 97, sorry. Which reduces the impact on residential and commercial.
Well, I mean, it reduces the up, it brings the up down.
It reduces the increase.
Instead of $44,
Yes.
it's 30.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry. And instead of 183 for commercial, it is it's an even amount, 150.
Right, and I would just have to compare $39 to whatever
Yes.
the increase was this year,
Yes.
which I can't remember.
Hold on, I got it. Next page. Next page. Next page is the total impact. It was $1. It was $21.
Last year was
Yes.
$21.
Or the current, not last year, the current year.
This year, people are paying $21 more.
Yes,
And next year, at our minimum, they would pay $39.
yes.
Okay, thank you. I just even say that. Get it in my brain.
That's
Thank
special.
you.
And so then this last page is the one you've been seeing all along when we talk about the utility rates and highlighted. That is going to be in front of you with an ordinance here on September 23rd for those utility fees. But if we look down the line then on 26, the property taxes we just talked about, keeping the levy rate the same would be $3.67 a month for residential. The franchise fees, $2.47. And then go to the total down there. The monthly impact would be $9.77. And the annual amount would be the $117.24 in that yellow red box. And you got sorts of other numbers if we lowered it.
Crunch it.
But yeah, that is kind of a starting point, and it's actually in your packets again. You're gonna be getting the agenda out, all these property tax numbers again, but I will enhance it for our discussion next Tuesday as well. But I'm glad we have an opportunity to have this early, so we can really kind of work through it prior to October.
It sounds like a smart way to go is to continue to help us see the impacts. And because we put the minimum on that first page, the 4.97, if you could give us these kinds of rates changes or the impact on the household monthly and annually, not only at your recommended, but at the minimum, that
Yes.
is
Side by
that
side.
fair? Like, that's the minimum we need to compare.
And I've got that actually, if you wanna write it on, but
Okay.
I'm happy to do it. For the property taxes, the 367 goes to 3.25. And then the total monthly, the 977 goes to 9.35. Your annual amount for property taxes, 44 goes to 39. And your total annual impact, the 117 goes down to 112.24. And again, this is only on the residential side. But it's
So it's
down
about
$5.
$5 difference for the year.
It is down $5. Yes. And so,
Hang on one second.
yes.
So, no, I feel like it's better we ask the questions
Yes,
now than in
yes.
October. So basically, in order to have any kind of significant impact on a monthly or annual basis, because $5 to some people is very significant, to others it's not significant difference, right? We would have to drastically reduce the levy rate, which doesn't allow us to meet our minimum obligations. Or we have to majorly cut certain things on these big sheets, correct?
You have to go to something like the franchise. Roll. You have to go, you have to go to the natural gas and electric franchise fees and roll back.
To make it significant.
To make a significant difference, because everything that's highlighted in yellow, WC, it's all this,
Okay.
wrong. you go down through your water rates and surcharges there, the replacement, and then stormwater treatment, sanitation, which is garbage. So, which is minimal. So it's really, it's up there in the natural gas.
Now's the part of the meeting when I start arguing with myself. Alderperson Timian brought me out for the call a little early. So as we think about where we land in the annual impact, and I it's one of my favorite charts in the budget every year too, just helping understand that. I would like to see us try and move our annual impact closer to $100. I recognize that's a hard place to get there. I also recognize a lot of this, as you just said, the only place to do that is to touch the franchise fee, most likely in an easy way. Property tax would be somewhat robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? I mean, we just been moving money around from somewhere, but I would be curious to look back a little bit in time at how that chart has played out longer term too. Because it's also fair, I think, to say that, well, some years do just have to get a little bit higher. But it's for me, it's not about whether one fee is up or one fee is down or where that is. It's really about like that cumulative impact in the long term, and the way we can give the best deal to our residents while getting the most resources for the city to use. It's kind of where I want to be. Also, I was able to look back and find it. Once upon a time, we had talked about automatically implementing a 5% charge, and that was removed from the ordinance.
Right.
3%.
I think that's how it ended up with the split.
Yeah,
over the years.
I lost the 3%
progressive
fight, but I won the 5% fight.
You won 5%, right? You lost.
That's
Okay.
We the number if we don't increase 3%. Does it get us to the $100 target?
If we don't do the three,
Yeah, let's just keep it right where we're at. We don't implement
well,
in the ordinance. I mean, in the resolution.
I would expect if we
that would even
went
be
back
more
to
than,
2,
yeah.
It'd be even more.
That would really gut your 10-year plan. It really would, but it would cut, on the franchise, it would cut $923,000. Yep. Okay, not doesn't nearly a million.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, $1 million a year, I mean, the CIP would have to come back down to the 1 million instead of
The two.
Right, and when you come, this is the tough spot we're in, right? We know from the community survey that roads are really, really important, and that's what we're trying to find. In addition to the riverfront and all those things, but that's
Right.
where it's going. Yes.
And our investment in the
Road
riverfront is the public purpose side of the 15 acres. That's where our money is going to go. It's going to go into improving the park, putting the amphitheater in place, putting the play areas in place. You know, that road infrastructure that was in the plan. The other side of that is the private sector investment that Chris is working on all the time. That's the residential, hotel, other commercial users at grade, that type of development. So, you know, there's a balance there, and a lot of what our public infrastructure side of the house is going to be pursuing grant funds, which today difficult at best. It doesn't look great politically. You know, I want to be frank; it just doesn't look great. We had this conversation yesterday with Douglas office. You know, we're competing for money that may not arrive, and but we're going to pursue it. We're still going to pursue the money. You know, I just can't predict whether it will be as successful.
We're talking about the build grants.
Like the build
All
grant.
Roses raised, like not a single, I may have said this when we found this out, not a single Illinois city got any of them. Left, very small amount of leftover out of their work, so. Even though, anyway, we
The
can
good
move
news
on.
is that they replenish that. Because both sides of the aisle love that program. They do. So it's a good possibility that when we reapply that we might have access to that.
Continue, please. Okay. So we talked about some of the other revenues, but if you follow on your big spreadsheet down the row, We've got the transfer into Canada to 215. That's been a nice steady number. The amusement tax is coming in strong, as well for $500,000. Then we are anticipating some potential land sales. And then we've got interest income. And like Bob said, if we, as a placeholder, we put some potential grant revenue in there of a little over $1 million a year. Any money that we would get most likely will have a match, but it's also down on the expenditure side. So the brunt of the revenues are the franchise fee and property taxes that drive this program. And then going down into the expenditures, because that's the next thing we want to touch on. First pink line going across. We talked about that. That's the CIP going up to $3 million. So in the 10-year plan, as it is presented, it was $24 million of additional infrastructure projects, which has been part of your strategic goal. The next line, you'll see the riverfront is that $1,250,000. It's from up above, and we'll get grant money. So it's just following that out for 10 years. So that is, I'm not saying all, but if we get grants, it's an in and an out. It'd be very valuable money. I'm going to skip the yellow line, but we've got Central Fire in there. $25 million for Central Fire, potentially some improvements at station number 2. We've got it in there for a total of $27 million. And then we have some placeholders for City Hall. And we don't have any, number 5 for parks. When we presented this back in July, we kind of felt that you were wanting us to take a look to see if we can get parks to balance on their own, and we were able to do that. And we'll go through that in October. Very pleased. They redid their budget, they reprioritized, and so no additional funding is coming out of the special CIP. We still got a placeholder for Bridgepoint that may change a little bit with some development that's going down there, about $1 million for a placeholder. And then I'd like you to turn to the very last page, because our last meeting in August, when Trevor did their presentation, he would ask us to come back with some impact. Their proposal for the impact would be. And we, anybody can chime in with this, but the first option there is the Trivers full-scale city hall remodel. If you recall, they presented 3 recommendations: 13 million, roughly 13 million, 15 million, and 17. After we kicked it around, the numbers presented here are the 15 million, which would include the basement.
Yeah, I believe so, yes. It's all 3 levels.
Yes, all 3 levels. And so back in July, when we presented this to you, if you recall, when we had the bonding set at 20 years, there wasn't any money left at all for the room. None. So now we went back and we pushed the bonding out to 30 years to make that work. And of course, if you push bonding out for 30 years, it's going to be expensive. And we had to do it for both City Hall and Central Fire. So you'll see in the fourth column over GO bond number of years, 30 years for both of those under this scenario, option 1. And then highlighted in blue, that is your total principal and interest. For City Hall would be $31 million over a 30-year period, and the fire station just shy of $50 million for a total of 81. If we went 30 years, both of those. And as we look at some of the other benefits, we talked about it that night as well. If you did try to renovate this building, it would maintain the downtown presence instead of all being here. Doing this option of pushing it out 30 years does allow $10 million over a 10-year period to remain in the riverfront. But again, it's not like you have $10 million up front. It's a scattered amount over the course of time. So it's a little bit of a slow move. But if there is 10 million, much better than 0.
But you have to spend 15K twice to get it. I mean, 15 million.
You gotta spend money to make money.
Doubling the cost of the project.
So in the
That's
notes,
the downside
in the
of
notes,
the extent.
I didn't put it, but in my my red ink pen I've got. This is a very costly option. But, so,
That's what you wrote.
I did,
So,
yes.
Yes.
The 15.5, that feels like it's keeping the paracone parapet.
No, go on.
So I thought that was
18,
1.8,
so that's, that was about $2 million for all of
and
that.
then solar was an extra 1.
Something like that.
And the math is not working for me, because just removing those two should bring it below 15, so. Unless we've seen new increases in the last month, which is possible. I'm curious to know what the 15.5,
We're spitballing because we don't have a hard record.
that's fair.
I think that's probably as close as we can get. I mean, 8 million of it is just infrastructure of the building itself. It's not even any physical space improvement. Replacing the HVAC system, the roof, waterproofing the basement, and then just leaving. That's the 8 million. Another fire station all 4 years.
And that is the option 2 that Bob is referring to. Option 2, we reduce it to 8 million, just do some extensive maintenance. We would push that bonding down to 15 years instead of 30. The central fire, we could bring back down to 20 years, which makes it more affordable. So then the total cost of the principal and interest on the bonds, taking out 31 million down to 50 million. If you take a look at it as far as long or short-term solution, City Hall, we believe that is a short-term solution when we just for maintenance, but it is long-term for central fire. And it does continue to maintain $10 million available for the riverfront. Again, crunching years, but we're still getting 10 million over the.
Can you remind us how the 2 million got snubbed in for fire station number 2 and when it's full?
It is a holding number right now that we're continuing to kind of look at until we actually get out to the year 2027. But there's my understanding from the chief, and I think is the chief here, is that there are some significant improvements.
Yeah, I
Chief,
guess
Chief.
we should probably know what those are.
Chief, you want to just take a minute to explain to council what's going on with Station 2, which is over by the mall.
Actually, the facilities manager might be better to explain that. He's not here, but I mean, there was, I think, ADA upgrades that need to be done. There's no insulation in the ceiling. I know that that's been pushed off probably 5 or 6 years. So it's a lot of HVAC.
It's a lot
there.
of, it's not like
Yeah.
putting in new tile floors and new appliances. It's really structural, and it's roof related, it's an HVAC related.
Right. Yeah. I've got 3 plans, I believe, that I've not gone completely over.
Right.
Kind of a big renovation, medium, and kind of just some band-aid fixes.
Yeah. There haven't even been really Band-Aids out there,
No, there have not.
So take a tour. I always say, when in doubt, take a tour. Because, you want to see where your money's getting spent. You want to know what the problem is and you can visualize it. It's easier to understand what these architects and what they're talking about. Like this city hall, take a tour of the basement and get a real quick snapshot of what the issues are.
There's a lot of plumbing. It's plumbing, heating and back.
It's just, things wear out. It's like an old car, they eventually wear out and have to be replaced. Unfortunately, what we ran into here is that the systems are so old, based on when they were originally installed or replaced, that can't get replacement parts. So trying to fabricate parts is extremely expensive. But that's how we've been band-aiding this building as well as that.
The ventilation is bad enough during the humid months. They can sit at the kitchen table and eat dinner at night, and moisture drops. And there's no insulation in the ceiling to prevent some of that stuff that happens.
I had a multifaceted question. I'm looking at the debt amounts for both central fire and city hall renovation, and that's the full amount. for the borrow. I mean, we have a special CIP fund originally was partially intended to help lessen the debt amount. So if we run any, I know we just got over 2 million potentially into it from the JCPenney deal. So have we calculated it all using the existing special CIP fund? I know that's the point of this meeting, in order for a debt payment to reduce the debt obligation and save us a lot longer.
That 2.8 million is included in that big spreadsheet. It's just been kind of reallocated.
Redistributed across all.
The main thing is, you look at the 25, right around, and it's going into the 26 as well. Some of it went in, if we do the renovation, we were trying to pay $1.3 million up front. You'll see that in the blue line for City Hall. Trying to pay cash as much as we could with any cash on hand. And then, of course, we purchased that land, but we were planning to purchase the land for the fire station. But it's just a combination of probably scooted out into the future years, because there's still a balance. There it is. There's a balance of 1.4 at the end of 25. So if we take the 1.3 in cash for City Hall renovation, plus the cash on hand in the green, there's 1.4 that was unallocated. And then we allocated it in future years to try to make everything work out.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything further this one? I might just mention that, you know, we've got a lot of work to do between now and October. We're going to continue to talk about property taxes.
Yes.
But just to kind of keep in mind what Bob and I were talking about, these are such huge projects, and we're talking about City Hall, that we would like consideration that as we present the October budget, that we would like to leave the bonding for City Hall out of the scenario and put that's what I did here.
Have to step take your time.
Excuse me. We'd like to take the bonding, the bonding for City Hall out of the project and put it all up in the yellow line for the unallocated.
Unallocated for future.
Yes. As just a placeholder. And then as soon as we know how much in bonds we'll be issuing, then we can distribute it into the correct tax.
It gives us time, basically giving council time.
And we can amend the budget, and we may know in October, November what those numbers will be, but if we don't, we'll at least adopt it, just leaving the revenue wise and make a good decision, and we can amend the budget. We may not have all the decisions within 4 weeks.
I don't think it will.
Sure. Yes.
If you get these rates, interest rates, they're subject to change, right? So
Absolutely. That was one of the hardest parts. I think you would have noticed for the fire. I actually talked to him about this. On the first scenario, City Hall was at 4.9% for 30 years, and then he's got fire, this is our financial advisor, at 4.6. That is their best estimate of where they actually think rates may be coming down. So waiting a year for the fire station is a lower rate. But again, that shifts day to day.
Other questions from the council? Thank you very much. We move to executive session.
Your Honor, I make a motion that the council convene an executive session for the purpose of discussion of property acquisition -5 ILCS 120/2C5, price setting for sale or lease of real property -5 ILCS 120/2C6, pending probable or imminent litigation -5 ILCS 120/2C11.
Second by Alderperson Schmidt. Roll call, please. Alderperson Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Hitch. McNeil.
Aye.
And Kern. Aye. You have to move Thanks, everyone. We'll move to executive session.